And Resilience Live. After a few weeks off, we are back with our monthly series. Since we were last here at the end of June, we've seen big changes in the district, the reopening of hospitality and galleries, and the slow but steady return of customers to the West End. Today, we're pleased to welcome Rebecca Salter, President of the Royal Academy of Arts, who will be explaining how the world-renowned gallery reopened its doors earlier this month. You'll be able to put your questions to her in the usual way by clicking on the question mark icon. And of course, you can put your questions to her during the presentation as they occur to you. But first, let's cross over to Katie Thomas, Director of Marketing at New West End Company. Katie.
Thank you, Martin. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining this special arts edition of West End Resilience Live. We're exceptionally lucky to have such an extraordinary art and cultural heritage here in the West End, renowned the world over for our theatres, restaurants, hotels, museums and galleries, as well as our shopping. And we have all witnessed firsthand in these past few months just how important the whole West End ecosystem is to our economy and how we depend on each other in order to thrive. As the New West End Company now move forward with the recovery plan, we're re-engaging with our audiences across a host of programmes and activations, focusing initially on accessibility and welcome, as well as highlighting the unrivalled offering and experience that the West End gives. From our quick fixes like the West End Easy, which is creating a basket of measures to ease the experience of actually getting into the West End, using interactive maps, parking discounts, preferential taxi rates for our shoppers, and all promoted through our own channels as well as tourism and transport channels. We have paid media and earned media with influencer tours, pop-up activations and rewards-based shopping through our privilege programme, as well as key commercial partnerships and direct marketing to our customer database. We'll be sharing an outline of all of these plans with you this week. In fact, some of it is live on our website, New West End Company website now, and it'll be sent to you in the morning. And that gives all of the details about how you can get involved and contribute to the programmes that we're putting together. A further marketing session, rather like this one, is being scheduled for mid-August, with a Q&A session in which you'll also be able to receive an invitation and ask us questions about how to get involved. So our USP of fashion, culture, art, design and dining really becomes the key to attracting our customers back, because you just can't experience the energy and vibrancy, the excitement of the West End on your local high street. So while we're in these challenging times today, we have to look forward, but honour and value this unique heritage more than we ever have. I think, you know, it was the artists that were in our destination first, and then rich merchants came to sell exotic and interesting items of cloth and various knickknacks to them. So this destination has been home to eclectic mix of artists, designers and craftsmen for hundreds of years. It's home to vision, inspiration and innovation, and undeniably generated in a large part through the 250-year presence of the Royal Academy of Arts right here on our doorstep, a place where art is made as well as exhibited. Today it's a great opportunity to get to know more about the Academy, which attracts around 1.5 million visitors a year, coming to see its exhibitions, its displays, attend the events, as well as its shops and cafes. And I'm sure we'll learn more about the enormous amount of work that goes into creating such an exceptional cultural programme. I'm really excited to hand over and introduce Rebecca Salter, the President of the Royal Academy of Arts, to tell you more about the RA and the role art can play in our recovery. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Katie, and I'm very pleased to be joining you all today. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with our traditional home in Burlington House, which is where we've been since 1868. But as many of you may also know, about 2 years ago, in our 250th anniversary year, we joined our 2 buildings together. So we now have not only Burlington House, but the building at 6 Burlington Gardens. And a byproduct of that was that it revealed the presence of the Royal Academy schools to the public. So when the Academy was founded, the academicians met in December 1768 and founded the Academy. They met again in January 1769 and founded the schools. It was the very first thing they did. And it was a very simple act of generosity. Most of those artists had travelled in Europe, knew that there was not an academy in this country, and it was a mechanism for the transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next. But for an awful long time, the schools have been sort of in hiding under the academy, and most people didn't even know they were there. But now the buildings are joined up and you can walk right through the middle of the schools. People now are beginning to understand our roots, and our roots are both in the showing of art. So we have the canon, the artistic canon in our galleries upstairs, but very importantly, we have the next generation of artists working in the schools. So we've got in one building art that is familiar and has been seen, and then emerging from the schools, the art of the future. Who knows what it will be, but it will be different and it will be exciting. And the other part of the puzzle, which of course we all know is vital, whatever kind of organisation you're running, is money. And the academicians right at the beginning hit upon the idea of having an annual exhibition, a summer exhibition, and the money raised from the summer exhibition went to support the schools. And to some extent that is still true today. I was elected president in December. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the governance of the Royal Academy. It's predictably enough quite complicated. So there are 4 officers, 3 of whom must be academicians. So the president, the treasurer and the keeper, and then the secretary and chief executive, who is no longer an academician and is now Axel Ruger, who joined us last year from the Van Gogh Museum. So we have this extraordinarily complicated structure that runs the Royal Academy, but at its very heart are working artists and architects, and that's what makes us what we are. So I had the good fortune or misfortune, depending on how you look at it, to take over in December, and then we all know what happened almost immediately afterwards in March. And I did talk to our wonderful archivist because I wanted to know if I was the unluckiest president in history, and after a few seconds thought, he said, "I think you probably are." So anyway, I've just got to live with that. So here we are sitting right in the middle of Mayfair, with Royal over the door, and that leads to all sorts of misunderstandings. One is that very few people realise that we don't get any public funding. We have to raise all our money ourselves, either through fundraising or obviously through our activities like exhibitions, etc. And also, for a lot of people, our entrance can be intimidating. There's a feeling that it's kind of not the place for me. So particularly with our new building, we're putting a lot of energy into breaking down barriers so more people feel more at home coming to the Royal Academy. And that's where the summer exhibition, I think, is particularly valuable, because it is a very democratic, it's a very open, very joyous celebration of creativity. Of course, it does have the byproduct of raising money for the Royal Academy. It also supports an awful lot of artists who sell through the summer exhibition. And one of the most interesting events of lockdown has been we now have a young artist summer exhibition, which is at the moment is online, and that is for children from sort of 0 to 19 basically. Last year, I think it was the first year last year, we had 6,000 applicants. This year, because of lockdown, we had 17,000 applicants. It's now online, it's on our website, and I think there is some extraordinary work. I mean, I had the privilege of choosing the prizes and it was extremely difficult. So that's another example of how we're trying to engage with a different generation. And we're very aware of our sort of Mayfair footprint. And part of the thinking behind joining the two buildings and having a sort of front door, I mean, I'm not sure, we don't really want them to be a front door and a back door. We want them to be two doors, basically. It's been slightly delayed by the delays to Crossrail, because I can remember sitting in meetings where people were coming up with extraordinary numbers of people who'd be pouring out of the Crossrail station and straight into our Burlington Gardens building. So that is still slightly on hold. But we are still, to be honest, I think we're still learning how to use the building, because as you know, when you first move in to a new house, you spend a year or two moving the furniture around and deciding which way you want to face. And when I took over as president, I think we just got through that phase and we were beginning to focus on what we were going to do with all this new space we've got. Of course, again, that's been slightly interrupted because I think you need different skills. We'd obviously been running a massive capital project, which is one type of skill, and you might call it the hardware. And we were moving into the content phase, the sort of software, which needs a different type of skill. So that's where we were, and we were very excited about, again, bringing in perhaps a new audience to Burlington Gardens, because of the layout of the buildings, we could split them vertically, and one of the ideas would be one of the buildings could be open different hours. You know, maybe we've got a fabulous new lecture theatre. We still hope to become the West End destination for lectures, and the idea that you would come into Mayfair for a stimulating lecture and then maybe you'd go on somewhere for a meal or something. And I still think there's a lot to explore there, and there are tremendous possibilities. So that's where we were. And then on the 17th of March, I unfortunately had to be the president who closed the Royal Academy, which was it really was a desperately sad thing to have to do, because I'm not even sure whether we closed through any of the walls. I think we might have done for a day, but never for this long. So it was, I mean, I still feel terrible about having to do it, but there we are. And then we were immediately faced, of course, our income streams have vanished, more or less vanished overnight, which left us really focusing on the people who, more than anything else, underpin the Royal Academy, which is our friends. We have, I think, about 95,000 friends. We're incredibly fortunate to have so many loyal friends. And of course, the minute you close the building, they no longer have access to, the exhibitions and the cafes and all the things that we offer them. And so a lot of energy at the beginning went into how do we engage with them, and more than anything else, how do we keep them with us? They represent about a third of our income, so we had to keep them. And we've always been very clear, I think, that the relationship with our friends is not purely transactional. We like to think, maybe we're flattering ourselves, but we like to think our friends like us, and we like to think they stay with us because they value what we do. And also, I think we're very clear that we believe in what we do, and I think a lot of our friends in turn believe in those values. And so they have been incredibly supportive, and we've lost very few over lockdown, which is, I mean, it's extraordinary. We put huge amount of energy into targeted online content. We also managed to produce, as a friend, you get 4 magazines a year, and we managed to produce an issue of the magazine from lockdown, which again was very welcome, because actually the demographics of our friends, about a third of them are not on email, so we needed to be able to communicate with them. So it was quite a complicated picture, but what we wanted to ensure was when when we reopened, the Royal Academy was not sort of, I don't know, hollowed out. So we had a message which was a mix of reassurance that whatever happens, we'll be back, but also subtly flagging up that it'll probably be different for a while. And, you know, I'm so far, touch wood, I think we're extremely lucky that our friends have stuck with us. That left us with the rest of the organisation, which I know is true to just about every organisation in the country, is that we moved everything onto you know, Zoom or something. As president, I have to chair council. Our governance is through council, and that's made up of 13 Royal Academicians and 3 external members. And we've been meeting fortnightly, which is way more than we normally would. And then perhaps the most terrifying thing of all was I had to chair my first ever General Assembly, which is all academicians on Zoom. And actually dealing with the mute-unmute on that meeting was quite something. So having worked out how we were going to run the place, we then had to immediately look for savings, because we are facing losses of about £1 million a month. And so we launched a fundraising campaign, which is ongoing and will be for a while. But again, the Royal Academy, because we've always been independent, I think we're, as an organisation, very nimble, and we could go from one sort of fundraising to another sort of fundraising almost overnight when this happened. But the thing we really had to sort out, because this is at the heart of what we do and this is what we offer to Mayfair, was to sort out our exhibitions programme, because that is our lifeblood. And what happened with lockdown was exhibitions got stuck in venues all over the world, and it was like this enormous bowl of, I keep saying it's a bowl of exhibition spaghetti, and curators from all over the world were sort of pulling and seeing what would come off at the other end. And it was a very heartwarming process, actually, because it was very collegiate, and everybody, we all knew the problems we all faced because they were all the same. You'd got one exhibition in lockdown and the one you were hoping to get was stuck somewhere else, and so you were never going to get it. So in a way, we did this amazing deal, which was sort of, look, we'll keep Picasso, you can have that and you can have that, and unfortunately we won't be able to have that because there isn't a slot. It was sort of musical exhibitions. But as a result, it meant that we've been able to reopen with Picasso and paper, which is an extraordinary exhibition. One of the difficulties for the Royal Academy in relation to other arts organisations is that we do not have a massive permanent collection. So major museums in New York are already cancelling their temporary exhibitions. And basically you will go to MoMA and you will see Starry Night by Van Gogh, but there won't be as many temporary exhibitions. The Royal Academy, of course, we do have a permanent collection, but it's tiny and also it's free. So we have got no option but to sort of buck the trend and carry on somehow putting on temporary exhibitions, bringing works of art from all over the world, getting loans and all those complicated things that are made even more complicated by what's happened. So I think in a way the Royal Academy is more like a performing arts venue, because we've just, you know, the show has got to go on. So we decided, having been able to keep Picasso, that we wanted to open as soon as the government would let us. And I think we opened just a day, I mean, we're not competitive or anything, but it was just a day after the National Gallery. And we are extremely lucky, A, that it's summer, but B, that we've got a courtyard. So what we've been able to do is to take all our front of house sort of checking of tickets, sort of triaging of visitors out into the courtyard, into the open air, which makes it very spacious. This was particularly important because I think there was some anxiety amongst our staff about coming back to work, about coming in on transport. So we've got staff working in teams so that if one person tests positive, that team will go off. It's been quite complicated. And of course, everything is now on pre-booked time tickets, even if you're a friend. And then, of course, the most extraordinary thing happens. People come to Picasso and they stay in there for hours. So before lockdown, the average dwell time was maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Now it's about 50% longer than that, which of course is wonderful, because what it means is people are having a blockbuster exhibition experience, but without the crowding. But it is an interesting problem, because we've also got people with time tickets waiting downstairs. So now it's how we get people through and out the other side. So the next phase from next week, so the Picasso closes, and from next week we'll be opening Burlington Gardens with a new exhibition, Gauguin and the Impressionists. And then the whole campus will be open. And that will give us a little bit more breathing space, because broadly speaking, we are working to only about 20% of our normal capacity, which again, in terms of financials, is again pretty punishing. The response, I have to say, to our opening has been incredibly positive. People were almost in tears the first day we opened, and we met one of our members of staff spoke to, I think he was a friend, who had come down, walked to the Royal Academy, I think from North London somewhere, every week during lockdown, and peered through the gates, longing for us to reopen. Which is, I mean, that shows you the sort of depth of affection people have for the Royal Academy. Axel and I, all the way through lockdown, because we had security on site, both Axel and I cycled in every Saturday morning and had tea with our security staff. And the first thing I noticed, it only took 2 weeks for the weeds to grow in the courtyard. It was extraordinary. I made the mistake of remarking on it, and I think somebody thought the president didn't like the weeds, because the next week when I went, they'd gone, which I was a bit upset about. So I don't know if you're able to show the PowerPoint now. Are you able to share some of these images? Can we move on to the...
Yes, I think they're there.
Yep, there we are, jolly good. So when we were thinking about reopening, as I said, we wanted to be cautious. We wanted people to feel confident in coming back to the Royal Academy, and the tone of it was very important. I did my postgraduate in Japan, and I lived in Japan for 6 years, and I'm very interested in the Japanese method of what we call wayfinding, which is more intuitive with subliminal messages. I did a project a few years ago with St George's Hospital using those thoughts, and I think when you arrive at a venue and all you see is arrows like that, your sort of blood pressure immediately goes up. So what we wanted to do was come up with a scheme that was light-hearted but would give people confidence that we'd thought about everything. So if we could just scroll through those images, if that's possible. Our wonderful in-house design team, we've got a very talented young man who does all the drawings. So the signage is all done by them. The staff are all wearing special T-shirts, and we've done them very sort of, not cheaply, but affordably, so they can be changed if things change, you know, if the distances change. And if you've been, you'll see Joshua Reynolds got a mask. That's in the bathrooms, that's on the mirrors in the bathroom. So it was a way of, I suppose, setting the tone. So that, because we've all become familiar with those sort of arrows and circles on the ground and people standing, and there's something, I think people are exhausted by that now and sort of being told what to do. And I did hear of one museum that had put kind of circles on the floor in the gallery, almost like hopscotch, and you could only move into the next circle if the person before had gone. And you just think, after what we've been through, people want to have a more sort of joyous experience. So I'm incredibly proud of the entire Royal Academy for coming up with this and implementing this. It is a feature of the Royal Academy, is that it's bursting with talent and creativity, and I think it shows in this. And I'm particularly pleased also that we can play our part in reanimating Mayfair. It was very important to us to provide access to art for enjoyment, relaxation, stimulation, solace more importantly, and that's what we've done. So the really big feature for the autumn, which we're working on now, I had a meeting this morning, was the summer exhibition, which of course can't be in the summer, is moving to the winter. We didn't want to lose it. I certainly didn't want to be the first president ever to cancel it. So we've just shifted it, and it will be a celebration, but in the winter. I'm not under any illusions. It's going to be very, very tough for the Royal Academy and for all arts organisations, I think. But I think we have the skills to adapt and survive. And I've got several Japanese proverbs in my head, but my favourite Japanese proverb at the moment, which I think applies to the spirit of the Royal Academy: fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's the Royal Academy. Thank you.
I love that anecdote, and I will steal that proverb if I may, Rebecca. Time now for Q&A, and if you haven't put a question already, all you need to do is to click on the question mark icon on your window now and put your question to Rebecca. Some have already come through. We've got one here from someone remaining anonymous, but they want to know how the Royal Academy choose the curators for their summer exhibition. Can you shed some light on that?
Yes, so the curators for the summer exhibition are all academicians. So, and you have, in fact, that's what we were doing this morning at the meeting. We have this year the lead curators, the coordinators, I should call them, are the twins. The first time ever we've had twins doing this, Jane and Louise Wilson. And so then you have an academician doing the architecture room, the print room, painting, sculpture. And there is a sort of a rotation. It's very complicated, because if it was a strict rotation and people were forced to do it, because everybody's got a career, and there are times when they're really busy and they'll say, look, I can't do it this year, but I'd like to do it next year. So it's an art rather than a science putting it together. But it is all academicians, and every single work that is submitted, I mean, again, we get about 17,000 submissions, which are all viewed digitally by academicians.
Your customer base, this is another anonymous question here, has changed presumably a lot over the 250 years. Can you shed any insight in terms of recent changes in terms of the customer base? Do you mean customers in terms of purchasing from the summer exhibition, or say joining our friends? Do you know? I'm reading the question and they don't give any more detail, so I think interpret it the way that you will. I think the summer exhibition over the last few years has taken on a new lease of life. You know, obviously it's been going for over 250 years, and every now and again you sort of refresh it. And certainly now it has, I think it has become known as a place where you can go and look at an enormous amount of art and make your own mind up. And I think it's a very subtle thing, because it's sort of gone through a process of the Royal Academy. People feel a certain confidence in the fact that it's there. And very interestingly, obviously, I mean, anybody who's been will know there are only numbers on the walls, so you don't see names and think, oh, that person's famous, I'll buy that one. You see a number. And so what happens is people actually increasingly enjoy the act of choosing for themselves, saying, well, I don't know who did it, but I really like number 72. And then they'll look it up in the book and discover who did it. So I think it's becoming a destination for people who are perhaps interested in starting to collect and buy. And again, it's also quite, you know, if you've got a budget, you know that perhaps you head to the print rooms because they're much more affordable. So I think it is a very open and easy way to start buying original art, which I'd like to encourage everybody to do, obviously. I'm sure they will. Question here, who do you see as your biggest competitors on a national and international level?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, as has been shown by the way everybody's collaborated with exhibitions, I mean, I tend to not see it as a zero-sum game because I just think the more the merrier, I'm afraid. So I don't I mean, obviously, there are occasions when one would perhaps be in an exhibitions committee meeting and somebody would say, such a shame they've just had an exhibition of so-and-so at Tate because I wish we'd done it. You know, there's that sort of low-level competition. But I think generally speaking, it's quite collegiate, really.
A question here, again from another anonymous viewer. What's been your most popular exhibition to date?
I think that would probably be David Hockney's landscapes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Given the fact that there are a number of Mayfair retail brands which sort of share the same customer and visitor profile as the Royal Academy, do you think there's more opportunity than has been used so far to get those brands to get more involved with the Royal Academy?
I think so, and I think because the thing about, I mean, there is underlying Mayfair also is creativity. I mean, all those brands have designers, and that is sort of the creativity that has come out of largely the art school system, and we are part of that, you know, that creative world. It's quite possible that a Royal Academy school student could go on to work with a very famous brand, for example. And so I think there is tremendous potential for crossover there.
We've got a question here from David Shaw. Rebecca, firstly, congratulations on a great reopening, outstanding the Picasso show, and great staff. What do you need from Westminster City Council, New West End Company and the Mayfair business community to support your reopening?
Money. I just think if we can somehow just bring people back to, I mean, the tricky thing is that not enough people live within walking distance of Mayfair, let's face it. So we have all got to find ways to get people confident enough to get on some form of transport to come and see us. And when they get to us, we need them to have such a good time that they will come back. And that's our main aim at the moment.
Okay, another question here. Will there be an Art in Mayfair campaign this year with Bond Street and the Royal Academy?
Good question. You may be able to answer that. It would be very nice.
I'm only here to ask the questions, I'm afraid.
I could probably answer that.
Can you answer that?
Yes, well, we obviously we've had since your 250th anniversary, we've had this fantastic collaboration with you, which included these amazing art flags across our destination, firstly by Rose Wiley and then by Michael Craig Martin, which it's just been such fun to do, and many of our brands got involved with doing window displays with great big hearts saying thank you RA that lit up, and I mean it was just incredible. And I think, you know, we're so on track to create more from that as we go forward. We've had to put it on hold this year because the retailers wouldn't, it's not the right timing when we reopened for them when your summer exhibition's in October. It's just all wrong for them in terms of window space. But we are absolutely going for it, Stacey and I from the Royal Academy and your team, Rebecca, to look at 2021 without a shadow of a doubt.
Good, that's good to know.
Thank you, Katie. Just returning to the whole issue of reopening, what would you say was the biggest challenge of all for you in terms of the reopening?
The biggest challenge really is working out how you get people into and round quite a complicated old building. Funnily enough, the new 6 Burlington Gardens is going to be much easier because it used to be the Senate House for University of London. It's got a lot of circulation space. So that makes it much easier to kind of distance people as they wait to go into an exhibition. The problem with Burlington House, I mean, I shouldn't call it a problem, but you know, it was a private house, and so you go in the front door and there's practically no space at all, and then you're up the stairs. And so that's the reason why we've had to move everything outside, so that once people are through the door, they go straight up the stairs and into the exhibition. In terms of getting people through the exhibition, the difficulty has been the fact that the exhibition contains, I think, 2 videos. And of course, understandably, people stand and watch the videos, and then you get a cluster of people, and then you can't have more people coming through. And so I think for the foreseeable future, the actual design of exhibitions is going to have to, I think putting videos in exhibitions is going to be very difficult for a while, because of what it does to the timing of the throughput.
Just a reminder to our viewers, we are going to be wrapping very shortly, so if you've got any questions, do please put them to us now. All you need to do is click on that question mark icon on your webinar window. Before we go back to those questions, can you just remind us what exhibitions and initiatives has the Royal Academy got coming up in August and the rest of the year?
So in August we have Gauguin and the Impressionists. That will open in 6 Burlington Gardens next week, and that is and again it's quite an interesting, because we're all very familiar with one version of the Impressionists. What's interesting about this is a collection from Denmark, from a Danish collection, the Aldrip collection, and their museum is closed at the moment for building works, and so in fact, it should have opened in March, and the work arrived, and we just took the decision to leave it sitting in a rather sad, lonely way in its crates all the way through lockdown. But fortunately, they've been able to rearrange the schedule, so we will be able to keep it for the autumn. And then after that is Tracy Emin and Edvard Munch. And of course, in the main galleries from October, we will have the summer exhibition. And the summer exhibition this year, well, we have to call it the winter exhibition now, will run from October all the way through to January, early January. So it will also, because normally, for weird sort of reasons, our main exhibition's not open over Christmas. But this year it will be. So I'm hoping that again will increase the footfall to the building over the Christmas period, because the summer exhibition will be there and it's a great place to go shopping.
One last question. I know that you, I'm sure, like many arts institutions, put on online exhibitions and online content. Will you be doing more of that going forward on the basis of, I'm guessing, what was probably a successful thing, putting it online?
Yes, I think so. We put both Picasso and the other exhibition we've got, Spiliart, which will reopen but only by appointment. Both of them we put online, and that they were hugely popular. So I think we will continue to do that. We're also, for the first time with the summer exhibition this year, we're increasing the online presence with viewing rooms. So even if people can't come, they can look and buy online. I think the big challenge for all arts organisations is that over lockdown, because we wanted to be in touch with people, we've put so much content online for free. And I think the big question now is if there's any way of trying to monetize it so that we get some income back from it. And I think that's going to be quite tricky. I'm not sure if anybody's got that one right. Our most popular thing online during lockdown, by the way, was we have a most amazing social media person who works for us, and the morning after lockdown, he went on to Twitter and said, "Could you draw me a ham?" And people from all over the world drew pictures of hams and sent them in. And it became, I mean, I don't know how many millions saw it. It was called the Daily Doodle, Royal Academy Daily Doodle. I mean, he ended up on the front page of the New York Times as a result. I mean, it was just phenomenal. But it just was creativity, and it took off.
Rebecca, a great point on which to finish. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to those who joined the discussion. Next month we'll be running a West End Resilience Live for the new West End Company members only. Katie Thomas and Luciano Maglioni from the marketing team will be talking to members about new West End Company's recovery marketing campaigns. In September, we look forward to seeing the full West End family as we chat to Microsoft about upskilling, reskilling and different learning paths in a COVID world. For now, goodbye.